Baker Mayfield or Jimmy Garoppolo. There was an article Mary Kay Cabot, who covers the Browns, wrote that Baker, the reason they had to get somebody else in there because Baker was gonna not show up if they didn't get Deshaun. That they actually turned away from Deshaun. They weren't going to get Deshaun. They were going to try and go back to Baker, and that became too difficult to go back to. Now, I think you and I both agree that they didn't want to go back to Baker. Eventually, they go to Deshaun, and they got Baker. So we all know about Jimmy's situation. Here's Baker's. He's 27 years old. He's on his fifth-year option, which, like you just said, pays him $18.9 million. And he has something in common with Jimmy Garoppolo in that he's also hurt. He's a hurt guy.
Shoulder injury. I was just pulling up Seattle's cap information. They got some wiggle room. They have some cap space. And I think that's a big reason. Now, I don't know if they knew this. They wouldn't have known at the time what was going to happen with the Browns because no one thought he was going to go to the Browns, so Baker would become available because they cut Bobby Wagner, and that saved him $20 million. It might have just been simple as like they didn't view, and this is why I had some people DM me, why didn't Seattle just trade Bobby Wagner? And I saw some people, like some NFL people, maybe it was Albert Breer, like I don't think a lot of people quite understand contracts. Like, why'd Robert Woods go for a 6 and Amari go for a 6? Because they make $18 and $20 million. If they had made $6 million,
and Robert Woods is coming off an injury too,
and he's coming up. But if Robert Woods, even off an ACL, was making $3 million, you probably get a third-round pick for him, right?
Yeah,
or Amari Cooper had been making $11 million, you get. If Bobby Wagner was making $6 million, they could flip him for a third. But he's making 20. No one was going to trade for him, so you have to cut him. But they do have a team that, and obviously losing Russell, they take a dead cap hit, but they still save a bunch of money. They do have the cap space to inherit Russell Wilson's, Baker Mayfield's 18.7. Because a big difference of these two guys is one guy is $9 million more expensive if you are going to trade straight up for him. Now, what is your value of, I think Seattle is the one team that fits the bill of, they might overlook some of his cocky, people don't really like him. Right?
Overlook it. They might like it. Pete might like it.
Yeah, I think he would.
And we know the GM doesn't mind drafting a short quarterback.
True.
I saw
a little more mobile, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm not. He is not Russ. Don't get me wrong.
No,
Sheil Kapadia of The Athletic, who covered the Eagles, or covered the Eagles, now is national NFL writer, but covered the Seahawks. So I think this matters because he has some sense of Seattle. This is what he wrote. They can say what they want about Drew Lock, but I refuse to believe Seattle's going to put Lock out there as the starter week 1. The Seahawks could easily talk themselves into being competitive with Mayfield next year and figuring it out. Now, of course, Baker has informed John the Browns that the Colts are his desired destination. So cool on that. I said a while ago, I'll say it again. I think you tend to zig after you zagged. After you have a hard-ass coach, you go to a coach that loves guys up. How could you as Indianapolis go right back to Baker? It'd be one thing if it had never leaked. I think the Browns hurt themselves. Jimmy Haslam or whoever told more adult in the room, because no one would think they were nuts for going and getting like the talent, right? For saying we'd rather have Deshaun than Baker from just a talent standpoint. And it'd be like, no one would think, oh, they must hate Baker if they got Deshaun. They might just think, oh, they tried to upgrade because they're in a tough spot with Baker.
I agree.
But by making it clear that Baker is a bad apple, wherever you want to say, a loser, like it has made it more difficult for them. Now, maybe the Colts already know everything that the Browns know, but how could you possibly know everything? I mean, the Colts just got Carson.
Wouldn't you say the 49ers went out of their way? Now, again, it was true, but really went out of their way over the last year to prop up Jimmy and stand by Jimmy and support Jimmy.
And I think Jimmy had a thing, the situation with Trey Lance, there was an opportunity for him to show I'm a professional here. And he did.
The one thing you would say is Baker's, again, to me, Baker has to go to Seattle. And I saw Mike Lombardi tweet out this weekend. And again, this is right when it happens, you're going to hold a higher value, that the Browns let everyone know they need a second-day pick for Baker. And his take was basically like, that's laughable. One, you just hurt his value by saying he's a slapdick. And two, he's not under contract, and he's not good enough to be like, well, we'll just figure it out. Like his contract for several years is a deterrent for a guy like I'm not trading you much for someone I don't even know that much about. If anything, he's the arrow's pointing the wrong way. Injured character guy. So to me, Seattle is the one team that makes all the sense. I don't see any other team that makes any sense for Baker Mayfield. If he doesn't go to Seattle, I don't know where he goes. I really don't, because I do not see Frank and they just got rid of Carson, who fit the same bill and who was better than Baker. Now, the Saints would maybe still be in the mix if you told me, Mickey and Sean loved Baker Mayfield. And there were rumors, right, for years, probably starting right around 16, 17 as Drew was getting older, how they were always like, they love this guy. They were clearly just sniffing around. So Mickey is going to have a specific take. Now, in our limited interaction with the guy, and not like he has that much juice, but he's now the head coach, Baker Mayfield does not seem like a Dennis Allen guy at all. So I can see Dennis pushing against that.
No, especially, Dennis would have an opinion on Jameis. He might just think he's a likable guy.
Went against him every day in practice, right?
Yeah.
2 years or one. Yeah, 2. Because he was the backup 2 years ago, right? And then he came back to be the starter this year.
Yeah. I think the other problem is, like, Baker's in this position where he needs to do the Trubisky thing. Like, I'll go be Josh Allen's backup, but he's making $18.7 million. He can't do it. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, if they didn't have his fifth-year option, he'd probably, for his career, he might be in a better spot. Now, I would always rather make. He would have
been a free agent if they hadn't extended him.
Would have been a free agent, and maybe he ends up in Seattle, and that's not a terrible spot for him. And before we go any further, let's tell the people about ButcherBox.com/ham.
Sign up at ButcherBox.com/ham. Get 2 pounds of ground beef free in every order for the life of your membership, plus a $10 coupon.
Each box contains 8 to 14 pounds of meat, depending on the box you choose. That's enough for 24 individual meals.
He makes $19 million, so that's also not terrible. But I'm with you. Like, ideally, you'd say, okay, pick a spot that might make sense. If he was making nothing, where he'd go rehab, like Kansas City, I don't know, go rehab a little bit, just chill out, rehab, just rehab physically, show people you can be a part of a team, and you'll get what Mitchell got. Like, you just play a couple games, make a couple nice throws. Someone will sign you next year.
Patriots liked him a lot.
Kind of an awkward thing if they like Mac would be to bring in Baker for $4 million, but yeah.
The Rams behind Stafford, just do something normal. Just do a place that's just credible. The Chiefs make a lot of sense. Behind Brady would make a lot of sense, right?
Denver might be weird. Yeah, but you're right. If he's not on the Seahawks, and that's the thing, is he costs $18.9 million.
Yeah. To me, if Sam Darnold was making like $5 million, they're so desperate, I could see them. But Sam Darnold makes his fifth-year option money. So can you have two guys from the same draft on their fifth-year option and let them just battle it out? You technically could talk yourself into it.
It's not crazy. I mean, here's the thing. This goes back to what you said. So I'm the Browns. I'm on the phone with David Tepper and the Panthers. And I'm like, all right, we want a third. And the Panthers are like, screw you. And you're like, well, what did you just trade for Sam Darnold last year? You traded a second and a fifth. So you're telling me Baker, who better than Sam Darnold's career so far, isn't worth a third after you traded a second and a fifth last year for Darnold?
And he said we regretted it immediately.
I know.
Now, the one thing with Seattle, because Seattle clearly been sniffing around with quarterbacks forever, the Panthers general manager is a Seattle guy, longtime Seattle guy. So it is hard to know. Kind of crazy how Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield's careers, it just shows you, and we talked about this last year in the draft, at the time, like the excitement in Cleveland, the excitement with the New York Jets getting Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, and now 4 or 5 years later, it's like those guys aren't sniffing contract extensions, and I say both of them, like their teams that currently have them would do anything if they didn't have their fifth-year options, would do anything. And Josh Allen is just a superstar, 7th. Everyone thought the Bills were insanity. Josh Rosen is hanging on to the NFL by a thread. And Lamar Jackson, who barely went in the first round, won an MVP. I mean, just, at the time, it's like, oh, my God, Trevor Lawrence can't miss. We could look in a couple years in Trevor Lawrence's career. Now, again, he's better, more talented, but you just never know. Injuries, weird shit. Just these are humans in sports. These aren't widgets on an Excel spreadsheet. Like, things change quickly,
Really quickly. Yeah. Yeah.
fast. All of a sudden, you're like, in any draft, right? You're like, oh my God, Aaron Donald at 11? Is this the greatest player ever? Like 3 years later. How did he fall to 11? But at the time, everyone's like, he's kind of short. Does he really?
Totally.
You just do not know.
Like, where is
Howie Roseman took Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson.
you win some,
Now-
you lose some.
The Vikings laughed, but they're both fired. Howie just got an extension.
I texted you this today, and I actually mean it. Do you think Howie Roseman has ever considered hiring Jay Wright in some capacity?
I bet they've just. I bet he's brought him over there and talked. I mean, I'm pretty sure doesn't Jay make like 7, 8?
Yeah, Jay makes good money. All right, so who gets traded first, Jimmy Garoppolo or Baker Mayfield? That's the question we're trying to answer here.
I mean, Baker Mayfield. I think. I bet
Feels
Baker
like,
Mayfield.
right?
My guess would be the next couple days, because now it's like, don't you want to? They have Jacoby on the roster. It feels like they'll bring in, I could see them even like draft a guy in the 7th round, right? Because they're ultimately going to need a young guy once Deshaun start making huge money. If they like a guy in the 5th, 6th, 7th round, just have a young guy around Deshaun. Jacoby's like a short-term deal. Feels like Baker's traded in the next 48 hours.
I think the one challenge with it, Seattle specifically, is you and I just watched that Seattle Seahawks press conference last week. Pete, like, it's one thing to say I love Drew Lock, and then several months later, Drew Lock isn't your starter. It's
Number one
thing
pick. Number one pick in the draft, though, you're going to get. To me, it's like Baker. If Baker was like a 5th, if
understand.
he was the number one pick in the
my
draft.
point is he just sat there last week and said, Drew Lock, amazing. And the next week he's going to trade for Baker.
But he also said in there, in fairness, like, they might bring back Geno, competition. Like, he didn't name Drew Lock the starter. I think it's easy if you'd be like, this guy was the number one pick in the draft. We had him as a top 5 player. We had the opportunity, and we traded a 4th round pick for him.
Yeah. I think if Baker gets traded to the Seahawks, then we're down for Jimmy Garoppolo. Then we're down, unless Kirk been missing somebody, we're down to the Saints, the Panthers, and the Colts, right? And I don't know that the Panthers, like, it feels like the Colts, John, have to get a quarterback this year.
They do not have a quarterback.
Like, it's
pretty nuts.
Like Sam Ellinger cannot be their quarterback week 1. There's not a rookie that can be their quarterback week 1.
Yeah, they're fucked.
So, I mean,
I think, is that why the Niners are holding strong?
it probably is. But, candidates are falling off. The good thing for the Niners would be Baker going to Seattle, because Seattle is not a Jimmy Garoppolo destination.
If Baker were to go to Indy, it'd be pretty devastating to the brain trust that have held on this long.
And it would be a really crazy reflection, right? Because it'd be like, guys, how are you going from Carson to Baker? What are you
It'd be
doing?
a weird move for Indy, too, for sure.
But I could see Indy going, younger guy, we're going to do the same thing we did last year with Baker, try and do it again, except this time we'll do it well. We'll get the most out of this guy. We believe in ourselves. Baker was a good quarterback in 2020. We can make him a good quarterback again.